Hi there, welcome once again to the Dukascopy TV studio. I'm Ben Jones. Back for part 2 of his interview looking at plastics in the ocean is Gustaf Lundin. Carl, thank you very much for joining us once again.
My pleasure.
So if you can begin for us by explaining the amount of plastics that are in our oceans, what scale are we talking about here? How big is this problem and what's being done?
So for the whole existence of plastic, we've actually been throwing it away in a rather careless way. So most of what we throw away on land, one way or the other, makes it into streams and then later on to rivers and then down to the sea. So a very significant amount of early plastics ended up in the ocean. But even today, a very large part of what we're doing is actually not recycled. Now, we happen to be in Switzerland here, which has a very good recycling record. We're probably at the order of 90-95% or so recycling. But a lot of uses that we have, we use it the right way, and there's actually no way of recycling it. A good example would just wear your clothes. Most clothes now have some sort of plastic somewhere in it, and this plastic breaks down into microparticles that gets washed into the ocean. Looking at cosmetics, if you have a scrubber, for example, these scrubbers actually contain plastic, and that plastic ends up in the ocean. So even when you're doing the right thing as a consumer, you end up creating a problem in the ocean. So that's one of the problems in the plastic, that we have sort of an unclear idea of how to tackle some of these things. The second big issue, I think, is where the plastic ends up. So we calculate maybe 15% is on the surface, and that's the part which we've heard of, the great garbage patches, for example. There's 5 of those in the world oceans. Another one is that a lot of it ends up in the midwater. Now, the average depth of the oceans is 4,000 meters. Now, how are you going to find plastic particles in 4,000 meters depth? It's an impossible task to get rid of it. And then the bulk of it, actually 70% or so, ends up on the bottom of the ocean, and it's virtually impossible to find a mechanism of getting that up, particularly when you're at great depth, because it's very expensive to operate there. So all of those issues, I think, are ones that are great challenges for us.
Okay, now it's evident that this amount of plastic will have a negative effect on the environment, but can you talk more specifically about how it's affecting wildlife and some of the solutions to these problems?
So a lot of us have heard the problems of macroplastics, plastic bags being swallowed by sea turtles, for example, or entanglement of certain species. And that, I think, is something that, is resonates with humans. We understand what the risks are. When it comes to the microplastic, I think a lot of us have a harder time really understanding what it means. But de facto, lots of species now ingest this plastic, so they, in some cases, can't get rid of it, so they actually accumulate it in their stomachs. Occasionally that could actually lead to death. You have a number of cases also where there is a certain amount of leaching out of certain poison that is in the plastic. About 4% of plastic tends to have chemicals in it. It could be softeners, it could be colors, it could be various other agents that we're using to improve the use of the plastic. However, some of those are toxic also to humans and to the animals that live there. And that, I think, is a great concern of us, because that's sort of a ticking time bomb out there that is going to have a negative impact.
Okay, and who should be fixing this? Where does the responsibility lie? And how does an individual get involved in helping fix this problem?
So I think this is where it gets complex, because there isn't just one side to this problem. One of the problems, of course, is that as a consumer, we're trying in many cases to do the right thing. Not everyone, but a lot of people try to do it. But there might not be the products on the market. For example, if you go out to find a scrubber, you'll find that most of them actually contain plastic. So it's really hard as a consumer. Now, here it's a matter of substitutions. We need to find other types of materials. Maybe you can use coconut shell. Maybe you can use an organic plastic that actually breaks down. So there are substitutes. They're not going to be much more expensive. But right now, it requires the industry to get a demand for them and understand the need to change the behavior. I think we all look at governments to regulate things and to improve the way the market operates. There are cases where regulation has been quite successful. In places where there is poor, how should we say, public desire to take action, regulation can also be very useful. Hurghada in Egypt, which is one of the main dive centers of the world, has banned plastic bags. That might sound dramatic to some people, but in fact, it's probably the best way to quickly get at this problem, because the divers don't want to see plastic bags in the ocean, and neither do you want to see it in the desert. So I think that's one option to go down that route. And then, of course, it's the companies. And I think there's lots of business opportunities here. This is a place of lots of new innovation. So what we need to do is work with the different industries that are currently using traditional plastic and give them the idea that there are alternatives out there, that the market will demand this, and the sooner they adapt to it, the better they will be doing financially.
Okay, and for the actual plastic that's in the ocean at the moment, is there a solution to this?
So I think there are a few avenues. Where you have large accumulation, there might be ways of collecting it. Maybe this is a place for more innovation. We do know that passive collection, when you have a stream going on, for example, you can accumulate a fair amount of things. So you could envision some system of actually collecting them in the mid-ocean. I think for the plastic you have in the water column, it's going to be awfully hard. I don't really see a solution there. Possibly we could find mechanism for collecting plastic on the ocean floor. But again, I think it's far away right now, and I wouldn't be too optimistic about it. What I'm more optimistic about is finding mechanisms for working with the industry to also develop bioremediation. There are examples where plastics seem to be breaking down. There are micro dents in certain types of plastics, and there seems to be fungi that are out there that are actually in some ways evolving to consume plastic. Now, in all likelihood, these fungi will need very specific environmental conditions. They might have limiting factors also, which means there's not enough iron, or if there's not of certain trace elements, they're actually not going to be able to digest the plastic. I think it's unlikely that you'll have them evolve at great depths, because it's also a very tough environment to be active in, but we don't know that. Now, if there is a way to have bioremediation one way or another, of course there might be ways of enhancing that and improving on it one way or another. So that might for the future be a way, but I don't think we should kid ourselves and think this is a good solution. I think it's the second best when we've tried everything else.
Fantastic. Carl, once again, it's a pleasure having you in the studio.
My pleasure to be back.
And thank you for watching. Do make sure you keep clicking back to Dukascopy TV, as we'll be bringing you plenty more updates and exclusive interviews. Bye for now.